Okay, next. Mind of Jay. What was the hardest challenge you faced this year due to the adpocalypse? That's a great question. Technically, I'm not allowed to say this because you're not allowed to divulge this this stuff on YouTube. I don't know why. It's part of the terms of service, but there was a week where we made literally, I'm trying not to say the word so I don't violate the terms of service. There was a week where it was that. So when that happens, you go, holy shit. What do we do now? What do we do now? Panic, scrambling behind the scenes. And it wasn't just me. The only solace I found at that time was talking to other YouTubers who were going through the exact same thing. And by the way, let me be clear. It's not over. It never ended. So when we went through the worst of the worst, I think we were literally on a blacklist. In fact, there's no other explanation for it. Because again, nothing coming in. Nothing. There were days where we literally had more views than CNN shows in the middle of the day. And nothing. So we were on a blacklist at one point. Now, we were taken off the blacklist, but we're still massively demonetized. You know, YouTube has tweaked the algorithms. YouTube doesn't allow advertising on videos that have controversial stuff. People have asked me, hey, why do I see those weird symbols in some of your videos over some of the letters? It's because I'm trying to skirt the demonetization system. And sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So something's still going on. We're still having the adpocalypse. We're still in like a permanent lower tier level of advertisers. So overall, what I could tell you is at this point, we've kind of leveled off at a solid 60% cut from where we were at before. And that, in all seriousness, was and is rather devastating, but you guys really, you know, I literally teared up when you all stepped up and did what you did. And what I'm referring to, of course, is Patreon. It's patreon.com/seculartalk. Because I really hate asking for anything. I hate it with every fiber of my being. But we were in a corner, we had no choice. I had to ask. And we set up patreon.com/seculartalk. I said, look, nothing is going to change. We're going to pump out all the same amount of content that we've been pumping out, but I just need you guys to, if you can, throw me $2 a month. Because there's enough of you where if you all throw me $2 a month, and it's like you're buying me a cup of coffee each month, that we would, if everybody actually did that, we'd be way better off than we were beforehand. And enough of you came through to save the show. We're still not doing as well as we were doing before, but you really came through in the clutch and really helped out. So the hardest challenge was probably that week where it was like everything just went to a standstill and nothing was coming in, despite the tremendous number of views we were getting. That was the worst. But the uplifting side of it was talking to other YouTubers, finding out they're going through exactly what I was going through. If they happen to talk about controversial stuff, we were all panicking. We had each other, you know, and since then it's gotten a little bit better, but there's still like a permanent adpocalypse going on because I don't think YouTube wants to risk having another round of bad press if there happens to be an ad that slips through and gets on a hateful channel. So they'd rather, like they did briefly, almost totally demonetize news and politics, or go that step further and say, like I think they do now, okay, we're not going to totally demonetize them, but just be very rigid and very strict about what you allow to monetize. So just final example I'll give you on this is, I did a story the other day on, and has it been, I think it was just released recently. It was the United States and what we did in Syria, where we killed a massive number of civilians. And Human Rights Watch came up with the numbers, and they did the research, and they released it, and we covered it. And that was demonetized. Now, I tried to word it in a way where you don't talk about kill, you don't talk about death, you don't talk about that in the title. I worded it in a way which was, there was a chance it wasn't going to get demonetized. It got demonetized. I submitted it for review, still got demonetized. So stop and think about that. Here we are, News and Politics show, covering the news that the U.S. killed children, killed civilians, with your money in your name. Human Rights Watch reported on it. So I'm reporting on a report from a human rights group concerned about making the world better. And they go, that doesn't... Oh, you're against blowing up children? We're going to have to demonetize you because you discussed that. The fuck is that? So they don't make a distinction between covering a controversial issue and advocating for making the world better versus covering a controversial issue and advocating for making the world worse. They just say, you're just discussing an issue that's not... I'm just not going to... Mind off, demonetize, which is why there's a permanent 60% cut. And by the way, if you haven't yet, please, patreon.com/seculartalk. Help us out because it's not, I don't think YouTube is ever going to get better and I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust them. I think the 60% cut is permanent in terms of our funding on the YouTube end. So that's where we're overwhelmingly funded by you now through Patreon. So patreon.com/seculartalk. Okay. Shane Meehan asks, God, I love this question. Thank you, Shane. A non-politics related question. What golf clubs are in your bag? So this is the part where most people listening just skip ahead because they're like, I don't give a fuck about golf. Anyway, next. But as most of you know, I'm an avid golfer. I love golf. I spend a lot of my free time golfing. And what golf clubs are in my bag? So let's see. Start with the putter. I have an Odyssey, I think it's called Tie Hot 2. It's a very simple looking putter. I'm into simplicity. I like very simple looking golf clubs. So it's a very kind of square, very conventional-ish putter. I think it's called Odyssey Tie Hot 2. What else? We have wedges. I have a Cobra Tour Trusty lob wedge. It's actually not a lob wedge. It's called a flop wedge, technically, because it's 64 degrees. I carry a 64-degree lob wedge, which is rare. Phil Mickelson carries one. He might be the only pro that carries one. Then I have Cobra forged one-length irons, which I absolutely love. I just switched them like a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. I don't think I'm ever going back. One length is the way to go, by the way. If you're a golfer, try it out. Give it a shot because all the clubs, for those of you who don't play golf clubs are usually, they're variable length. So the shorter the club, distance-wise, so like the club that you hit shorter will be shorter, and then they get longer as you go towards the clubs that hit the ball further in the bag. The one-length irons, they're all the length, cut the length of a 7-iron, and your gapping in distance is still correct. So they had to use, all this technology and tungsten weighting to make it so that you can get the right gapping with the club being the same length. But I have sand wedge to 4-iron, so even my sand wedge is the length of a 7-iron. And I love them. My ball striking has gotten a lot better. I just noticed you can't talk about golf to non-golfers without it sounding sexual. I'm talking about one length. I'm talking about ball striking. Okay, and then I don't carry any fairway woods because I suck at hitting fairway woods. I always did, and I don't know why. I can't hit a fairway wood to save my life. But I have a Cobra utility iron, which is, I have it set at like 19 degrees, so it's kind of like a 2.5 iron. I have a adjustable Cobra hybrid, which I have set at 16 degrees, which is basically my 3-wood replacement. So it's like a 1 hybrid. Yeah, it's like a 1 hybrid. And then I have my driver is a Callaway XR driver, and I have that set at 8 degrees. So I have a low loft on the driver, but it's the XR version, so it's not the pro version, but the regular version, because with the driver, I like to have a little bit more of a trampoline-y face across it. I don't like the pro drivers that you really have to middle it to strike it well. I like it when it's a little bit more forgiving on the face. So that's my golf bag, and now I'm sorry I just wasted the time of 98% of you because I know none of you give a fuck other than the 2% of people who listen to me who are golfers. Next. Can you go on Joe Rogan's show? I feel like he's so malleable that after one conversation with you, he'd become a progressive. That, by the way, this is a question that showed up a lot. A lot. Like, this was right up there with our Traps Gay. So, I would, of course, go on his show. I watch his podcast all the time. I think it's great. He put me on to Joey Diaz, who is like one of my all-time favorite people. Joey Diaz, for those of you who don't know of him, check out his podcast. He's just this hilarious 50-some-odd-year-old overweight comedian, and he's like the realest dude ever. He's just awesome. So check out Joey Diaz if you haven't. Check out Joe Rogan, too, if you haven't, but I'm sure a lot of you have. There was a time when I was close to going on the show. I'm part of the TYT network, so they had a relationship with Joe. Somebody got in contact with Joe, said, hey, we got this other guy on the network who you might be interested in having on. I was talking to one of their producers, but it kind of fell through, and I didn't hear back from them. And I think it may have fell through because of the Sam Harris thing, because TYT and they don't like Sam Harris, clearly, and they've done many segments where they go after Sam Harris in an aggressive way. Sam Harris is friends with Joe Rogan, and, you know, I don't know if Sam did or didn't do it, but he probably said something, you know, hinted, hey, man, like, these aren't good people, whether it's TYT or people who are part of the network, like myself. So, X-nay on the TYT skay. And so Joe, I think in that whole beef between Harris and Jank, and I think Rogan kind of strongly sided with Harris and Rubin and stuff. So I'm kind of like collateral damage in that whole thing, where I'm part of the TYT network. So I have I'm like de facto blacklisted in a way. But I don't know, if Joe wanted to have me on or reached out to me, I'd be more than happy to go on. But I also think that at the time when I was close to going on, I only had like 100,000 subscribers, and the quality of the show wasn't as good. And, you know, Joe only lets people on his podcast who is genuinely interested in their stuff. And there's a good chance that maybe he watched a few of my segments and he was like, I don't see why people like him. I'm not interested in it. Moving on now. So, you know, that could have happened. Maybe that has something to do with it. I really don't know. But I honestly, at this point, don't even know if he knows about our show. So, but of course, I'd love to go on. I think his podcast is super fascinating. And if he were to invite me, I'd say yes.